Shalom uvracha, Rabbi Sai. Thank you for tuning in. It's a very, very cold and dark morning here in Yerushalayim or HaKadosh. We're hoping that we have a quiet class over here. The joke last night, as we turned our clocks from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., was that the 2 o'clock missile attack from Iran has now been moved to 3 o'clock in the morning. These are the jokes that are going around. My students are saying to you, Rabbi Nissel, we'll see you next week, if there is a next week. And we are definitely living in extraordinary times. And what I want to share with you is that we're living in times that are definitely challenging all of us in the world of Emunah. So I just want to begin by quoting the holy Reb Elimelech from Lizhensk. We have a tradition. It's actually a tradition that was passed through Yerushalayim or HaKadosh by Shlomo Zalman Auerbach from Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhensk, that before he passed away, he gave over 13 simonim that Mashiach would come. And the one I want to share with you is called the rope of Emunah. And the Rebbe Reb Melech said that before Mashiach comes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make a rope from one end of the world to the other end of the world. And that rope is going to be called the rope of Emunah. And everyone is going to be told to hang on to that rope, hang on tight. And then Kodesh Baruch is going to take that rope and start shaking it up and down. And as we get closer to Mashiach, he's going to be shaking it more and more violently. And people are going to let go and people are going to fall. And the ones that can hold on to that rope of Emunah till the very end, they are the ones that will greet the Melech HaMashiach. So for people like us, it's incredibly important for us to constantly work on elevating our emunah, to try and see what is going on today through the correct lenses. This week has been a week we almost forget the amount of tragedies that have happened this week. I'm actually from London. I'm actually from Golders Green. I'm actually literally was born round the corner from where those ambulances were blown up this week. Of course, nobody was hurt, but it was terrifying. It was very scary. And of course, the goyim around were all making comments like, only Jews have ambulances. Okay, only Jews have ambulances. What's going on over there? What dark and evil tricks are they up to? Why don't Christians have ambulances? They cannot fathom that we do this for the purpose of chesed and for the purpose of chesed with goyim as well. All they can do is just turn against us and attack us and say the most horrible things. We're living in a time where every couple of hours here in Eretz Yisrael, there's another missile barrage. And of course, we only take note when bad things happen. And bad things have happened this week. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people that were injured this week. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people that nebuch have gone through the most terrible Yisurim. I just want to see somebody just joined. If you could just identify who you are. Somebody just joined. I just want to make sure that it's Anshe Shlomenu.
Yeah, hi, it's Rochalea Plotkin. I just saw that there's a Zoom.
Okay, Beseda. Okay.
I'm part of NCSY. I have a group of teens. I wanted to know if it's something to get to me. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is.
Pleasure, with absolutely pleasure. You can continue to listen.
Okay, thank you.
This is for every single Jew.
Okay, thank you.
So what I wanted to share is that with all the craziness that's going on in this world, at the same time, there's a lot of things that are tremendously mechazikas, that are giving us a lot of personal reminders that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is deep involved in our lives. I just want to share something very personal that yesterday the Nissels decided that we are staying here for Pesach. I was supposed to be running a Pesach program in Europe, and we noticed, my wife and I, that over the last few weeks, a lot of the people, one by one, the people that were coming to the program for us, ended up not coming. Each one for stranger reasons than the next. unfortunately for some of them for health reasons. The people that we were going to bring to the program, one after the other, were not able to make it. And then yesterday, when we realized that it was physically not possible for us to get that unless you go through Egypt, which my wife was not prepared to do, and it was prohibitively expensive as well. Just the bribes was prohibitively expensive to get past the border, and we decided to stay. And then we realized that Kush Baruch Hu was making sure that we would not feel guilty that people were coming for us and we would not be able to make it. So we noticed the little Yad Hashem, the little proverbial smile from the Eibishter. And if you open your eyes, they're happening all the time. With all the missiles that are hurting so many Jews, you have to ask yourself, how can it be that so many of them are missing? So many of them are destroying physical houses, destroying people's homes, but people are not there in the homes when they are being hit. Each missile comes with its own little um, package of Nissim when you go deeply into it to remind us, if we choose to remind ourselves, that Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one that is orchestrating everything, that Kadosh Baruch Hu is very, very close. How amazing is it that the timing of this whole tkufa is, as we said last week, from between Purim and Pesach, and we're coming up to Chag Hamatzos. Next week is Chag Hamatzos. Tomorrow night is Shabbos Hagadol. Chag Hamatzos revolves around a matzah, and the matzah is called in the Holy Zohar, and we're going to explain this in greater detail, the food of faith. The actual phrase of the Zohar in it's in Daf Ches Amud Beis. It brings down that matzah is the mechla de mehimanusa. It's the Aramaic word, is the food of faith. And therefore, as we're going to learn on a very deep level right now, we are going to get a chance to actually eat emunah. And I'm going to explain to you exactly what that means to eat the food of faith, how that affects us in a very, very positive way. And as it always is with our mitzvos, the more that we understand what we're doing, the more effective it is. So Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach, everyone should put their safety belts on because I'm going to be taking you on this journey to understand mitzvah, the mitzvah of matzah on a whole, totally and complete different level. And the ideas are fresh, they're new. I passed them through one of my colleagues, Zev Rodman, who gave it a stamp of approval, the chidushim that we're about to share over here. And I hope, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that what I'm saying over here is Teras Emes, and that you are going to not just enjoy what I'm about to teach you, but get the proper chizuk and in emunah that is necessary. So let's begin at the very beginning. Last week, we spoke about the first Mishnah in the 10th parak of Psachim. And there is a Tosfos. Tosfos brings down an extraordinary statement quoting a Yerushalmi lahalacha. The Jerusalem Talmud says the following words, and I quote, these are the words that Tosfos Tzadi Tes Amud Aleph Amud Beis in Psachim, Kol ha'oichel matzah be'erev ha'pesach, ki'ilu boyel arusasoi bebeis chamav. Boom. What does this mean? Anyone who eats matzah on Erev Pesach, it is if he had relations with his betrothed future wife in the house of his father-in-law. Now, this has got to win some kind of a prize of the most unexpected and the most, in your face, martial parable. You hold yourself back from eating matzah. It's like that excuse me, yeah, if you don't hold yourself back from eating matzah, you eat matzah in Erev Pesach, what you have done is, we're going to see almost literally, is that you have had relations with a woman that you're about to marry in your father-in-law's house just before the wedding is supposed to happen. That is how severe what you have done is actually happened. So I cannot share with you the Litvische jokes that go around this particular statement because they're not appropriate. But I heard this when I was a kid already about how people look at this bizarre thing, and people, generally speaking, say it is a flagrant over exaggeration in the Jerusalem Talmud. It's not something we can take too seriously or too literally. The problem is the Yerushalmi goes on to say the following words, and if you do this, Habal Arisase, you will get, quote, you will get Leica, you will get Malchus, you will get lashes. If Basin sees you eating matzah on Erev Pesach, they will give you lashes. What kind of lashes? Rabbinical lashes. It's called in Hebrew makas mardus. It is the makas, it is the lashes of redemption. Okay, that's pretty out of the box. That's pretty crazy. Well, guess who quotes this? Who could be more rational than the Rambam, Maimonides? The Rambam himself brings this down in Hilchos Chametz Matzah, the laws of Chametz Matzah, Perek Vav, Halacha Yud Beis, quote, O Misha Achol Matzah Be'erev Pesach, Makin Oisei Makas Mardus, you give him Makas Mardus, you punish him with lashes, and if you don't get it, the Rambam adds the following words: Ad shetetze nafshay, until his soul departs from his body, even if he dies. Okay, this is a little bit crazy in terms of rabbinical literature, and the Rambam quoting it in his halacha sefer just to make sure you don't think it's some kind of a parable for the Maharal to explain on some esoteric level. He brings this down la halacha. If you eat matzah this coming Wednesday afternoon, it's lashes time. So you think to yourself, okay, so the Rambam maybe lost it. Okay, he's super exaggerating. I just want to point out that the Rambam goes on to say the following words. He says, in general, you should know that you should not eat an Erev Pesach. Obviously, we know what the minhagim are. And then he adds the words. He said the reason is to enter into the mitzvah of matzah. The words he uses betaiva. The word betaiva normally is the word that we use for desire or lust. Hakina v'hataiva v'hakovod moitzim es adam in ha'olam. What takes you out of this world is taiva. Now, the word taiva is interesting because when it comes to the exact, seemingly same law on Erev Shabbos, you shouldn't eat a meal before Shabbos. He said that you shouldn't come into Shabbos. He doesn't use the word taiva. He uses the word te'avam, which means appetite. Very similar words. It's just that te'avam is kind of like, more gentle and more understandable and more relatable. And taiva evokes this whole thing, which is more suitable for the relationship between a male and a female. So what exactly is going on over here? I just wanted to tell you that it's about to get worse. There's a lot of quotes I just want to share with you about eating matzah and Erev Pesach over here. Let me just quote to you over here. Um, um, quote. This is from this next quote over here is from the Beis Halevi. Okay, excuse me. It's from the Baal Hamar. Just for those of you who just want the background over here, the Baal Hamar was a person who lived more or less the same time as the Rambam. It's 1,000 years ago, and he lived in Provence in southern France, and he was known as Reb Zerachia Halevi. And there is a sefer that he wrote called the Baal Hamar, which is found at the back of the Gemaras, and the Ramban argues with him frequently, as he does over here, and his commentary is called the Mulchamos Hashem, the wars of God against Reb Zerachi Halevi. What does Reb Zerachi Halevi says? He says, you should know that the halacha that you cannot eat an Erev Pesach matzah begins at the same moment when you cannot eat chametz. So after 6 hours, this is what he writes, when the Torah prohibits, which is midday, 6 hours, you cannot eat chametz from the Torah without the rabbinical additions. That's when the mitzvah of not eating matzah kicks in. Quote, and you should know that even although, and he quotes this Yerushalmi, that he says, whoever eats matzah on Erev Pesach Kabayel Arisaso is like having relations with his future betrothed wife. You should know, Hani Mili, that's only from the 6th hour onwards. But beforehand, it's perfectly okay. Now, just to get this out of the box, out of there, that you should know the Ramban immediately argues with him and shows that it begins in the morning. And the Magen Avram quotes the Archas Chaim, who is also a Rishon from from 800 years ago, that it starts even the night before that you should not eat matzah. The Mishnah Berurah brings down the minhag not to eat matzah from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and I'm guessing that Rabbi Eli Loeb is like me. He's got Hasidic blood in him, that we don't touch matzah from Purim onwards. Am I correct? Is that your minhag? This is what we do. But the bottom line is that Rav Soloveitchik, I picked up this book this week. They were selling it for 10 shekel. It's a collection of all Rav Soloveitchik's writings on Pesach, beautifully done, from the stuff that he wrote on the Gemara, on the different sugyas. And there he points out that the idea behind what's going on behind the scenes is that Reb Zerachia Levi, the Balamar, takes very literally how it works between a relationship between a husband and a wife. And he explains, I'm just going to give you the general summary over here. The way it works is that, good evening, Rabbi Ross. Okay, the way that it works is the following, is that generally speaking, we go through two stages in a marriage, Erisin and Nisuin. Erisin means that you are now binding yourself to one woman. She is forbidden to everyone. And as Rav Soloveitchik points out, she's forbidden to you as well. It occurred to me for the first time this week that the word erisin means to bind, but it also has the word isser in it. Isserim and erisin is the same words. So she's forbidden to you, and she's forbidden to the whole world. And then comes nisuim. Nisuim means that elevation, that kedusha that comes with nisuim, and then she's permitted to you and to you only. But there's this interim period when she's forbidden to everyone. Says Soloveitchik, that's what Reb Zerachi Halevi, the Balamar, is saying about matzah. Matzah goes through two stages. Number one, it is forbidden, so to speak, to everyone, meaning it is disconnected from the world of chametz, but you have not yet entered into the world of matzah. So it's a direct parallel. This is the way that he speaks it out. Now, all of this that I'm sharing with you now, it's just an introduction from the craziest of the craziest, most literal of all, is the Vilna Gaon himself. But before I do that, I want to make a bracha. L'chaim, everyone. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'varo. Apologize. I'm going on 2 hours sleep, and so I need that caffeine fix. Here we go. Everyone, sit down carefully because you're about to hear the words of the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says the following thing. He says, and I quote, this, by the way, the quote is from a sefer called Maaseh Rav. Maaseh Rav is a collection of the minhagim of the Vilna Gaon. This is halacha kuf tzadi beis, and I quote, he's describing how you run your Seder table. He says, v'achakach, describing what happens just before you eat matzah, megalin pnei hakala, you reveal the face of the bride. Who's the bride? The matzos. La'acha sheva brachos, hanal. After you've made the previously mentioned sheva brachos. Okay, can you get more explicit than this? And he goes on to tell us exactly how we get to these sheva brachos. Yain, you make the bracha on the wine at the beginning of Seder night. Then you make the bracha on Kiddush, the Kiddush bracha. Then you make Shechiyanu. Then you say, this is the opinion of the Vilna Gaon, we do not paskin this way, but the Vilna Gaon says you make an atilas yadayim when you do what we call rachza. That's his opinion. Number 5 is the Berer Priyadama on what? On Karpas. Number 6 is the bracha at the end of Magid Asher Go'alanu. And number 7 is the bracha on the second cup of wine. That is what he calls sheva brachos. And then you reveal the kallah. Now, I don't have this minhag. Maybe I'll do it this year. I never even knew this minhag exists. Before you wash the bread, you open up the matzos and show it to everyone. This is like a bedeken. It's like you're showing the kallah. Then you go off and you do 3 more brachos. The Natil Tadaim for the matzah, the hamaitzi for the matzah, and the bracha for matzah on the matzah. There's 3 more brachos after you've done the sheva brachos. What I found fascinating, and I don't know anyone else who has discovered this except for me, so you are hearing this for the first time in history, maybe there's some sefer out there that noticed the following thing. But I found yesterday another Rishon. Okay, now the Vilna Gaon lived 250 years ago, but a Rishon, the Rishon's name is called the Mahari Vai. The Mahari Vai, Vai is spelled W-E-I-L, Vial, but it's pronounced Mahari Vai, or the Mahariv. Rabbi Yaakov Mivai, he lived at the beginning of the 15th century. He lived in Germany. He was the Rebbe of the Trumas Hadeshen, and he was a Talmud of the Maharil. For those of you that know these names, you can actually daven at the Kev of the Maharil in Worms, in Vermeisa, in Germany, right near Frankfurt. But that's where he comes from. So this is way before the Vilna Gaon. And he says in Tshuva Kuf Tzadi Gimel, V'ha'oichel matzah be'erev Pesach, Kilu boil arisasei bebeis chamav. So once again, he's quoting this Yerushalmi. Dekaidem shehayesele matzah bai zayin shehutalo matzah. Before you're allowed to eat matzah, you have to make sheva brachos. But he has a different sheva brachos: yayin, kiddush, asher golanu, kaisheni, netil sedayim, hamaitzi, and matzah. And he skips the shechianu, and he skips the bracha on rachza, and he skips karpas. Now, I happen to know that some of the people that are listening to me, they know their basic Kabbalistic concepts. I'm going to say this very, very simply without going into it. Everyone that knows Kabbalah 101 knows that number 7 is very significant. Whenever you have the 7, which corresponds to what's called the 7 spheros of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, these 7 building blocks of creation, there's always 3 hidden ones. So the Vilna Gaon actually has 7 and then 3. And it's very, very obvious that the last 3 are the ones that belong to matzah itself. They're, so to speak, post sheva brachos, the til sedayim on the matzah, the bracha on the bread and the matzah itself, and those are the hidden 3. But that's how it works out. Let me summarize everything that I've said so far, and it's time to give answers. It's time to give very powerful answers that hopefully will change our Seder night. So far, I just quoted the most important quote, of course, for me was the Vilna Gaon. A bunch of sources takes very, very literally the idea that eating bread, eating matzah on Seder night is the equivalent of marriage, and the bride is the matzah itself. Seems like a very bizarre comparison, but the Vilna Gaon says there's a bedeken. The Vilna Gaon says there's sheva brachos beforehand, and we also learned that the Rambam says if you mess up, you get malchus, just like if you messed up and you had relations with your future bride in your father-in-law's house, you get lashes. I mean, what is going on over here? What does it mean that matzah is called a kallah? And I would like to answer this based on a few ideas that I saw. I'm putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I want to point out at the very beginning is that where else do we see an unexpected food that is called a kallah? Besides matzah, where else do we see that a food is called a kallah? So the answer is, and just bear with me while I bring you my proofs, the 3 meals of Shabbos. Holy, holy Shabbos. Shabbos Kodesh, We all know Le'echadaidi. I'm here. It's Friday for me. Still Thursday night for you. So tonight I'm going to be singing Lechadaidi, Likras Kallah, to greet the Kallah. The Kallah is Shabbos, and you should know that the Zohar says the following thing. Now, those of you think that Menachem Nisl quotes the Zohar, don't. You can calm down. The Zohar is printed in your property, in your sitter. For those of you that have like Nusach Sfard, just before Askina Dusa, the famous poem from the Arizal, many Siddurim, many benches bring down a quote from the Zohar that brings down the power of having a meal. And the Zohar begins by asking the following question. We all know that Shabbos is called Makar Habracha, the source of all blessing. So, okay, Shabbos is the source of all blessing. We know that. But why is Shabbos the source of all blessing? So we all know, probably from Rashi in Parshas Bereshis, because of the Mon. The Mon is what makes Shabbos the Makar of all bracha. Asks the Zohar, the holy Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, what are you talking about? Because of the Mon? There was no Mon. There was no Mon in there was no mon in the midbar on Shabbos. On Shabbos there was no mon. So how can it be that Shabbos is called the Makar Bracha because there was no mon? Obviously there's no mon that should not. It should be a day without the bracha. The mon should be the bracha. This is the Zayar's question, and the Zayar answers using Kabbalistic language, but this is the basic idea of what he says. He says no. He says you should know that all the blessing of the 6 days of the week, all the blessings of the 6 days of the week where the mon came down, the bracha itself had its source in holy Shabbos. What does that mean? So I just want to share with you. I had this book. I have not looked at it for 20 years. When it came out, I looked at it, and this is from a man called Shimshon Pincus. And Rav Pinkus, this book over here, it's not even in my library, it's in my daughter's library. They teach this in the seminaries. The people don't know that Rav Pinkus was a super Kabbalist, and I did not appreciate this when I read this the first time. But he has the ability to, oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Rav Eli. People do not realize that he does what I do 1/100th of what he does. I try very hard to take the deepest of the deepest ideas that I learn. I ask myself, how can I take something up there and bring it down so that people who don't have the inside knowledge of these deep things, that they can enjoy it and be inspired by it. It's what I try and do. And Rapinkus does it on a whole different level. Everything sounds so simple with him, but he's actually explaining the most powerful and the holiest of things. And he quotes the Zohar. He actually goes in a different direction for what I want to share with you. He doesn't mention the kallah. He talks about something a little bit different, but he explains the Zohar, and he says the following words, and I quote, he says, Mashal, here's a parable. Imagine that you go to a store, and this is where you get everything that you need. Whatever it is, you're going to Walmart, or whatever it is, okay, you're going to Walmart, and you come in and you see that the sign outside Walmart is closed for the day. You say, well, that's crazy. How could that happen? And then the owner of the Walmart steps out and explains to you, says, today is the day where we're getting rid of all our old stock. And you look outside, you'll see hundreds of trucks, and we're putting in all the new merchandise for the next season. And everything that you need from tomorrow onwards will be from what we're setting up today. This, says Rav Pinkus, is a perfect marshal of understanding Shabbos Kodesh. Shabbos Kodesh does not have mon. Shabbos when it prepares the mon for the next 6 days. Shabbos Kodesh is the kli, the vessel that contains everything that takes you all the way to the end of the next week. That's what it means. It's the Makar HaBracha. Now, it happens to be that the Zohar goes on and says to us the following words. But you should know that in practical level, if you want to get that bracha, you must eat the 3 meals of Shabbos. Eating the meals, what's that got to do with Shabbos being the Makara bracha? Should be Shabbos itself, the essence of Shabbos. No, you've got to eat the meals. You've got to have the 3 meals, and we're not going to go into it because it's not a Shabbos class. Each of the 3 meals is a different dimension of the shefa that goes into the week. If you want to know exactly how it works, so take out a commentary on the Arizal's Askina Su'udasa, and there you'll see exactly how the meals contain each one of it different components of the shefa. You'll also see that the meals are compared to a kallah. The whole idea of the imagery of a marriage is found in the meals itself. And the secret of the 3 Shabbos meals is exactly the same secret as when Elisha tells the Isha Hashunamis. If you remember the story, your Bible stories, Elisha says to the Isha Hashunamis, if you want blessing, you need to have 1 cup of oil. And from that 1 cup of oil, there'll be an explosion of as many cups of oil as you can possibly want. Just you must provide that 1 cup of oil. For those of you that heard my Hanukkah class this year, I mentioned an opinion that says that that 1 cup of oil went on to be the cup of oil that created the Hanukkah miracle. Be that as it may, you need to have something that is, so to speak, the catalyst. And from that, everything can come. That catalyst are the Shabbos meals. And from the bracha of your Shabbos meals comes the bracha from the 3 weeks. So you're eating food, and as you're eating your Friday night, Shabbos morning, Shalosh Shudas meals, you are creating bracha for the rest of the week. When you eat that food is the lechadaidi, the kallah in the lechadaidi is being expressed in eating that food. How on earth does this work? I don't know exactly how this works, but there's something incredible. There's something amazing and powerful about the food itself being the kallah to the chosn is in this case you, meaning Klal Yisrael, and Shabbos expressed through eating the food becomes the kallah. The kallah is the kallah to the chosn, which is Klal Yisrael. So this needs a very, very important interjection. What is every chassan and kallah all about? I do believe that we have my Talmud, Reb Eli Felsenstein, with Hashem. You should find your kallah at the right time. And I'm saying to you now, what exactly are you looking for in a kallah? So the word kallah has inside it the words kol, means all, which means completion, which is the same word as vayichulu shemai va'aretz. Shabbos is called the kallah to the 6 days of the week because it says vayichulu, it is a completion. So if you want to go back to my delicious coffee over here, so this cup is the kallah to the chosn, which is the coffee. It contains it. It gives it the ability to flourish, to be able to be expressed. The woman is the bias, is the Jewish home to what the chassan, the husband, brings in. In exactly the same way, the 3 meals is the bias, is the kallah to the shefa that we bring into Shabbos, which then spreads out to the 6 days of the week. And that is how Shabbos is called a kallah, at least in one dimension. For those of you that have studied L'chadaidi, there's other dimensions as well. But for today's class, it is eating those 3 meals. When you eat the challah of your Shabbos meals, each one of the 3 meals, you are unleashing shefa for the rest of the weeks, just like the kallah unleashes the shefa in the Jewish home to make sure that everything that's brought in has a place to flourish and a place to succeed. That is how the comparison works. And now we are ready to move back to the topic of Pesach. Ay, 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 ay. Holy Pesach and the holy matzah. Let's stop for a moment and think, how does food work? Let's ask ourselves the $1,000,000 question. Why is it that Pesach is the only Yom Tov that seems to be obsessed with food? Um, Sukkot, nothing to do with food. I mean, there's a mitzvah to eat. Rosh Hashanah, it's about the shofar. Sukkot is about the sukkah and the Dalit Minim. Shavuos is all about Kabbalah Satira. All the Yom Tovim we eat because of Simchas Yom Tov. But Pesach, every single mitzvah except for Magid and Challah, which is there to enhance the food, it's all revolving around the matzah and the ancillary eatings of Pesach, Korban Pesach, and Mara, and Charesis, and Karpas, and all the things that we're going to be eating. It's all about what we put inside of ourselves. So here again, I want to thank the beautiful words of Rav Pinkus. The way he says it, he has a way of saying things that is incredibly beautiful. So I just want to read it in his words. He says, "Yesh lasim lev the davar nifla." Every single one of us should notice something spectacular. Kasher eichlim, when a person eats food, there's something unique about food. Yechelim kiviyachol lahargish is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's instant karma. There's instant recognition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in your life. Why? Ha'ofen shekimat ein digmusa ba'olam hagashmi va'af b'rochame chani. Both in the physical and in the spiritual world, nothing compares to the moment that you put food into your mouth. Why? Because this is the way that food works. Imagine that you are a typical person, you're coming to your meal, let's say after a day's work, or you've been up the whole night and you're having breakfast, whatever it may be, and you come in and you're hungry. Now, Baruch Hashem, we live in a wealthy world. So when we're hungry, we're hungry. We're not starving. Okay. I always pick on my students, especially when we go on Poland trips. They say, Rabbi, I'm starving. We don't know what starving is. Baruch Hashem, we don't know what starving is. But our grandparents knew what starving was. They knew what it meant. But even if you're hungry and you come in and you are sapped of energy and strength, and you see the food in front of you, you put it into your mouth, you drink, and immediately you start to feel that your body is reviving itself. There's an instant change when a person's really hungry, and then the food goes inside of you, and you feel replenished, and you feel encouraged, and you feel like I can move on, especially if you're enjoying the food because the food is tasty. And this is, by the way, I was just having this discussion with one of my students. She was asking me how to explain to someone that does not believe in God. And one of the discussions that came up was amongst the many, many things that cannot be explained by scientists that believe in evolution is why are there so many thousands and thousands of different cuisines that are out there and different ways to bechein, bechesed, barachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes the food experience so beautiful. You could say it all happened by chance. You could say everything is a coincidence. But you and I, if we choose to be people of faith, we can see in this incredible array of different ways that we are nourished and we instantly feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is out there for us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of us. In the words of Rav Pinkus, when you eat, take off, umiyad, immediately, and mismalim hold on, let me just read this properly. Mismalim b'koiches chadashim, chaim chadashim, hizdamnus lahargish keshe yoshem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the opportunity to choose to immediately feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there in your life. Now, this is not today's class, but obviously we live in the world of Bechira. Free choice means you can eat without thinking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as does 99.9% of the world. Or you can choose to notice that the moment you put food into your mouth when you're famished, you want to immediately thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're looking forward to the benching. Benching is not today, we're not talking about benching, but benching is this incredible tour de force where we go through all the ikrim of Judaism, every single concept in Derech Hashem and Mesilas Yesharim you'll find in benching because we suddenly had this ability through food, which revives us, and it literally revives us. Without food, we cannot exist. We suddenly feel we've gone from place A to place B instantly, and it's all from Him. That's the power of food. Let's get back now to Chag HaPesach. Chag HaPesach was not a regular moment. It was an irregular moment. It was an unusual moment. It was the birth of Klal Yisrael. It was the moment that we came out of the proverbial Egyptian womb and we became a nation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, became partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to fulfill what He wanted when He created the world. As you all know, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He created the world for a purpose, to take this world to that beautiful place called Olam Haba. And He needed a partner, and that partner was created out of this cauldron of evil, of tumah, of everything is teva called Mitzrayim, the Meitzer Yam, the constriction of Egypt. We come out and we're now ready to do our mission. And as the Sefer Kuzari says, whenever we say Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, every mitzvah is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. It means coming out of Egypt all the way to Har Sinai, where we got the full charge of what we're supposed to be doing here in this world. We got the mitzvahs, we got rabbinical Judaism. It all began when we came out of Egypt. That moment when we came out of Egypt is that moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I now have the proper partner to bring out what I want. I now have a partner that is disconnected from the world of Mitzrayim and everything that it represents. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I need my nation, Klal Yisrael, to be anchored with me all the way to the end of the journey. How am I going to do that? And the answer is the first moment of the Jewish people as a nation is going to be through food. I know a lot of you are thinking, yeah, typical Jews and food, it's like a thing. But now we actually do understand it is a thing, and it's a thing on a totally different level than we ever thought about. There's a chance for all of us to reach for the first moment as us as a nation, the clarity. What clarity? It's not the same as Shabbos. Shabbos is the Makar Bracha for the 6 days of week. Pesach, MATZA, is a different form of clarity. It is the clarity of Emunah. It is the clarity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in our life. It is the clarity which is the essential nature of food itself, that beforehand we could not survive. Now we can survive. And with that moment, we have access to clarity. Enter the world of kallah, chassan, and kallah. It's not just that when you eat matzah, you suddenly feel there's a Kosh Baruch Hu in this world. As you enter into the world of eating matzah, you suddenly realize the matzah is not just a food. The matzah is a kallah. What does a kallah mean? It is a completion that unleashes everything that you need for this concept called emunah. Translation. Let me say this in simple English so we're all completely on the same page. In exactly the same way, the 3 meals on Shabbos is the kallah, to be able to provide sheva and bracha for the 6 days of week. Eating matzah on Seder night, on the 15th of Nisan, at the same time where we all have to recreate for ourselves that we're coming out of Egypt. We put this matzah into our mouth and we create that foundation of emunah and faith that will get us all the way to the end of the year, all the way to the next Pesach. A year's worth of emunah is all concentrated in a few moments of putting something into your mouth. How incredible is that concept? Of course, matzah is a kallah. Matzah is the completion. It's the bias of emunah itself. From there, emunah can flourish. And this is something unique and special about matzah, because matzah goes inside of us. It becomes part of who we are. It becomes part of our essence. We are eating emunah, and we are giving ourselves a storage of faith in the Kodesh Baruch Hu for whatever the next year is going to have in store for us that will get us to the end of the year. Now, this is so important because when you eat matzah and you put it into your mouth, as I always say, the first thing you do is close your eyes because if you see the people around you, you're going to start to get the giggles. Unfortunately, everyone has that yeshiva bacha who's makpid to put the whole kazayas in his mouth, and there's always little bits of matzah floating up his nostrils. No, you got to tune out and focus on what's happening inside of you, and focusing that your neshama is reaching a level. The Kleisenberger Rebbe says it's the easiest and fastest way to get Ruach HaKodesh is at that moment, as you're going through Seder night. At that moment, this is the pivotal moment of Seder night, is the matzah of emunah. This food of faith is becoming part of who you are. Just wanted to throw in a little bit of Kabbalah because I happen to know my clientele over here. It happens to be that the Sfarim HaKadoshim compare chametz and matzah. Matzah is the food of Adam Arishon, meaning Adam and Chava before the Chet, and chametz is the Eitz Hadas, is the food that we eat after we mess up and we bring everything down. Matzah is the pure food that the way it was supposed to be before the Chet. Some of you are aware that one of the opinions of the Eitz Hadas is that it was kallah. I just gave a whole class on Afrashas kallah and connected it to the Chet of Adam and Chava. It's dafka kallah. Kallah is the Eitz Hadas, and that is when we're talking that the rest of the year. But before we messed up with challah, we would have eaten matzah. That's what we would have eaten on in the world of the Garden of Eden. The Bnei Yissaschar, in his own inimitable style, points out that the gematria of chametz plus sa'ar, he does sa'ar sin aleph resh without the vav, is exactly the same gematria as Eitz Hadas. They're both 659. I checked it out. I always like to check it out. Eli Loeb says, I'm going to use that one. I can see in your eyes that Eitz Hadas is chametz and matzah. It works out that here we are for 8 days or 7 days here in Eretz Yisrael, but really focus on the opening moments of Seder night, or the central moment of Seder night. We put matzah into our mouth. We're reconnecting to a world of clarity that everything down here is from up there. Everything is with a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Everything is a Kodesh Baruch Hu himself. We eat emunah. We put the faith into our system. The beautiful words of the Bnei Yissaschar. He says, if you want to understand on a physical level what matzah is in contrast to chametz, he says matzah is you basically take flour and water, and after that you put it in the oven, and what you put in is basically just a baked version of what comes out. I said it backwards. What comes out is a baked version of what you put in. But chametz is not that way. You go to Berman's Bakery down the road from where we are in Hernoff, an Angel's Bakery, and what you put in, you put it in, but afterwards, inside the oven, all kinds of things are happening. It creates volume. The volume becomes bigger. And inside the bakery, the oven, the taste kicks in, and the texture kicks in, and the flavor kicks in, everything that makes challah delicious and yummy and part of olam hazeh. So the Bnei Yissaschar says that when the chametz hidden inside of the oven is doing all this growing and stuff like that, that's called that the matzah, the bread itself is building itself. And it is kaviyachol, as if to say, we doing our own thing. But the matzah stays nowhere in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hands. Whatever you made out of us, you are the one, you are the great baker in the sky. Whatever you make it, what you put in, that's what's going to come out. This is what he says. The matzah is plain flour and water. We've spoken about these two simple ingredients on other occasions. I'm not going to go back there now, but these two simple ingredients remain unattached. We're in your hands, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nothing else exists except for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's it. We're in your hands. We don't need to do what's called Hisayrus de Lasata, our own efforts. Seder night, everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Afterwards, Sfira Sa'oma, we start to do things on our own. We go back into the world of chametz and we try and fix it, and we go through level after level, 49 levels, until we're ready for the Shtei Alechem at the end. That Shavuos, that's Kabbalah Sotera. That's the other big wedding, but that's Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But on Seder night, we, so to speak, marry the matzah. We are marrying emunah. We are putting faith inside of us and becoming one with our faith. If you do it the day before, we literally look at you as if you have destroyed this opportunity to be able to reach this chassan and kallah matzav of pure emunah, and it is considered disastrous. We take this extremely seriously. Instead, we prepare for it, mamish like a wedding with sheva brachos. And with a bedeken, you open up the top, and then you put it inside of you, and you become one with it. And you are in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hands, and you unleash this. And you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is all yours. Everything we are giving over to you. We are in your good hands. My dear friends, when you're thinking about these ideas on Seder night, I think what we're doing is we're giving us the spiritual nourishment that's going to get us through the next year. The next year, no one knows what's going to be. It's scary. It's a scary world that we live in. It's full of anti-Semitism. It just seems to be getting worse. Every day we wonder who's going to be the next city where we're going to hear about some horrible story of anti-Semitism. We are relying on one guy in the White House. He goes. Is there anyone that can say with absolute clarity that it's inconceivable that America will have a pro-Palestinian president? No, it's super conceivable. The whole world has suddenly turned Iran from being the most evil regime since the Nazis into being this cuddly, friendly, lovely regime that has never been destroyed by those evil Zionists. It's the world that we live in. It's a scary world. Because Baruch is taking the rope of Emunah, he's shaking it more and more and more. And we, Anshe Shlomeinu, the people of faith, have an opportunity right now to give ourselves that superpower of inner faith by eating matzah on that Seder night where we go back into the Garden of Eden and we nourish ourselves by eating it, meaning it becomes part of our essence in our neshama and our guf, that matzah, that holy matzah of faith, which will give us the strength until the end of the year. The key words are, as the Bnei Yissaschar says, it's not me, it's all you. We're in your hands. Every single one of us becomes a Rubashkin in a prison. Okay, each one of us becomes that person that says, it's not me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you can do whatever you want. It's in your hands. Don't try and figure out who's who. What's the role of Trump? What's the role of the British, the French, and the Canadians and the Australians? Don't try and figure out how does Russia and Ukraine fit in. Don't try and figure out how do we understand the Israeli government. Is this good? Is this bad? What's happening? Don't try and figure it out. Put yourself in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hands, and he'll take care of everything. All we need to do is have incredibly strong emunah and to turn to him in our tefillos, and everything is going to fall into place. That is the guarantee that goes back from that moment when we came out of Egypt, and that will be the guarantee as we once again go back into Egypt and come out with Hashem next Wednesday night with the holy Yom Tov of Chag HaMatzos, the festival of the matzahs becoming part of us. All that's left for me to say is to wish every single one of you not just a good Yom Tov, but hopefully I never made it to Greece. I never made it to Europe. Maybe there's a reason why I'm supposed to be in Yerushalayim. Maybe I'm supposed to be greeting you guys as you come to Yerushalayim or HaKadosh, and we don't just eat the matzahs, that we eat the matzahs and the maror with the Korban Pesach, with the Bias Hagoyel, the Imher of Yameinu Amen, wishing you all a uplifting and emunah-filled Yom Tov, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring the final Gulgula, Ki Meitzeischa, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Eden Neflois. As the Prophet Micha says, everything we had then should come back in its fullest power for the Gula Shalem of Imher of Yameinu. Thank you so much, and a good Yom Tov.
Amen. Shkach.
Hey, Shkaya, Shkaya. Beautiful share. Thank you.